There comes a moment in life when the old way of being no longer fits, yet the new way has not fully revealed itself. This moment often feels unsettling, heavy or confusing. You may sense that something within you is shifting, even if your outer world looks the same. This is not coincidence. This is a psychological threshold, a turning point where the unconscious begins to surface, asking to be acknowledged rather than ignored. At such times, life seems to slow down or even resist your efforts. Paths that once felt natural lose their energy. People, ambitions, or identities that defined you begin to feel distant. This is not failure, it is dissolution. What no longer reflects your deeper nature must fall away so that something more truthful can emerge. The psyche does not evolve by comfort, but by tension between what was and what is becoming. You may feel called to question everything, your purpose, your relationships, your direction. This questioning is not weakness, it is awakening. The mind seeks clarity, but the soul seeks alignment. When these two are out of harmony, discomfort becomes the messenger. What you resist is often what holds the key to your next stage of growth. At a turning point, you are not being asked to rush forward, but to turn inward. Observe your reactions, your fears, and the patterns that repeat themselves. These patterns are not random, they are symbols, revealing unfinished inner work. Awareness is the act that transforms them. When you see clearly, you are no longer unconsciously driven by them. This is why moments like these feel destined. When inner readiness meets outer timing, meaning reveals itself. The video you are watching, the words that resonate, a pause you didn't plan, all are signals that you are standing at the edge of change. Life speaks softly at first. It only becomes loud when ignored. Trust this moment. You are not lost, you are between identities. The future is not something you chase. It unfolds naturally when your inner world aligns with truth. What feels like an ending is often the quiet beginning of a more authentic life. Turning points in life do not arrive suddenly or without warning. They begin quietly, often as a vague sense of discomfort that lingers beneath daily routines. What once felt natural starts to feel heavy, forced, or empty. Roles you have carried for years, worker, caretaker, achiever, pleaser, survivor, no longer provide meaning. This inner friction is not caused by external failure but by misalignment. The identity you have been living is no longer synchronized with who you are becoming. When this happens, the psyche signals the need for change through restlessness, dissatisfaction, or emotional fatigue. An identity forms early as a way to adapt to expectations, environments, and survival needs. It is shaped by approval, fear, and repetition. For a time it serves its purpose. SE, offering structure and direction. But growth is not static. As awareness expands, what once protected you can begin to confine you. The inner truth evolves, yet the outer self may continue to perform an outdated role. This gap between inner reality and external expression creates psychological tension. The turning point emerges precisely from this tension, demanding resolution. People often resist this phase because the identity they are shedding feels familiar and safe. Letting it go can feel like losing control, status, or belonging. There may be guilt for wanting something different or fear of disappointing others. Yet the discomfort persists because the deeper self cannot be negotiated with. Inner truth does not argue, it withdraws energy from what no longer reflects it. Motivation fades, enthusiasm disappears, and even success feels hollow. These are not signs of laziness or ingratitude, but signals that the inner compass has shifted. At this stage, confusion becomes a teacher. You may question your goals, values, and direction. The mind searches for logical explanations, but the answer is psychological rather than practical. What is breaking down is not your life, but the image of yourself that no longer fits your inner reality. This breakdown is necessary. Without it, awareness would remain trapped in repetition. The turning point forces a pause, creating space for reflection rather than reaction. As the old identity loosens its grip, emotions long suppressed may surface. Sadness, anger, grief, or longing appear without clear cause. These emotions were often silenced to maintain the previous role. Now they return not to punish, but to be integrated. Inner truth seeks wholeness, not perfection. It asks to be lived honestly, even if that honesty disrupts familiar patterns. Eventually, the individual realizes that the struggle is not against life, but against the refusal to change. When inner truth is acknowledged, clarity begins to replace confusion. Decisions feel quieter but more certain. The need to prove or perform diminishes. What emerges is not a new mask, but a more authentic way of being. The turning point does not mark the end of stability, but the beginning of alignment between who you are and how you live. Discomfort is rarely welcomed, yet it is one of the most honest signals the inner world can produce. It appears when something within the psyche is shifting, asking for attention rather than suppression. Psychological and emotional transformation does not announce itself with clarity or comfort. Instead, it arrives through unease, restlessness, and a sense that something is no longer working, even when there is no obvious external cause. This discomfort is not a mistake in the process of life. It is the process itself unfolding. When the inner self begins to outgrow old patterns, beliefs, or attachments, the nervous system reacts. Familiar structures provide a sense of safety, even if they are limiting or painful. As these structures weaken, uncertainty takes their place. The mind interprets this uncertainty as danger, producing anxiety, frustration, or sadness. Yet this reaction is not a sign that something is wrong. It is evidence that the psyche is reorganizing itself. Transformation requires the loosening of what once provided stability, and this loosening is felt as discomfort. Emotional discomfort often emerges before conscious understanding. You may feel irritated without knowing why, tired of situations that once felt manageable, or emotionally sensitive to minor events. These reactions are messages from the unconscious, signaling that unexamined material is surfacing. Suppressed desires, unresolved grief, or neglected needs begin to demand recognition. Discomfort functions as a messenger, drawing awareness to areas of life that require integration rather than avoidance. There is a tendency to escape discomfort by distraction, numbing, or rationalization. Modern life offers endless ways to silence inner tension, yet doing so delays transformation. When discomfort is ignored, it does not disappear, it deepens. It may manifest as chronic dissatisfaction, emotional numbness, or repeating life patterns. The psyche seeks balance, and if conscious awareness refuses to engage, the unconscious will find louder ways to be heard. Psychological growth requires the capacity to remain present with discomfort without immediately trying to eliminate it. This presence allows insight to emerge. By observing discomfort rather than reacting to it, one begins to notice its patterns and triggers. What seemed like chaos reveals structure. The discomfort points directly to outdated beliefs, false identities, or emotional wounds that can no longer remain hidden. Awareness transforms discomfort from an enemy into a guide. As emotional truth is acknowledged, discomfort gradually changes its quality. It becomes less overwhelming and more informative. The individual starts to sense what needs to be released, redefined, or confronted. This process does not happen all at once. Transformation unfolds in stages, each bringing its own period of instability, followed by deeper clarity. The discomfort signals that the psyche is shedding what is no longer authentic. Ultimately, emotional and psychological discomfort is not meant to break you, but to realign you. It arises when the inner world is ready for change, even if the conscious mind resists. What feels like suffering is often the labor of becoming more whole. When discomfort is understood rather than feared, it reveals itself as a sign that transformation is already underway. Loss of direction is often experienced as one of the most unsettling phases of life. It creates the feeling that the ground beneath you has disappeared, Leah. Uncertainty, where certainty once existed. Goals that once felt meaningful lose their pull, routines become hollow, and the future feels strangely blank. This state is commonly interpreted as failure or confusion, yet psychologically it often marks the beginning of deeper self-awareness. When old paths dissolve, they do so to create space for a more authentic understanding of the self. Direction in life is frequently borrowed before it is chosen. It is shaped by expectations, conditioning, and the desire for approval or security. For a long time, these borrowed directions can function effectively, offering structure and purpose. However, as awareness matures, the inner self begins to question whether these directions truly reflect personal values and needs. When they do not, motivation fades. The loss of direction is not random. It is the psyche withdrawing energy from paths that no longer align with inner truth. During this phase, the mind searches desperately for answers, attempting to recreate certainty as quickly as possible. This urgency often leads to anxiety, self-judgment, or the temptation to cling to familiar roles. Yet clarity cannot be forced. Deeper self-awareness emerges not from rushing forward, but from staying with the uncertainty. When direction disappears, attention naturally turns inward. This inward turn is the foundation of self-awareness. Without a clear external path, inner patterns become more visible. Beliefs, fears, and desires that were previously masked by busyness rise to the surface. The individual becomes more aware of emotional reactions, recurring thoughts, and unconscious motivations. This heightened awareness can feel uncomfortable as it reveals aspects of the self that were previously ignored or suppressed. Yet this confrontation is essential. One cannot become conscious of oneself while constantly moving toward predefined goals. Loss of direction also weakens the ego's attachment to identity. When you no longer know who you are becoming, the question of who you truly are becomes unavoidable. This uncertainty strips away superficial definitions and invites a more honest self-examination. Values are reconsidered, priorities reshaped, and the distinction between what is genuinely meaningful and what was merely habitual becomes clearer. Over time, the absence of direction fosters a quieter form of clarity. Instead of being driven by external markers of success, decisions begin to emerge from inner resonance. You start to notice what feels alive and what feels draining. This sensitivity is a sign of growing self-awareness. Direction slowly returns, not as a rigid plan, but as an intuitive sense of alignment. What initially feels like being lost is often the mind's resistance to transformation. The loss of direction dissolves false certainty, allowing deeper awareness to take root. Through this process, the individual does not simply find a new path, but develops a clearer relationship with themselves, which becomes the most reliable guide forward. Repeating life patterns are rarely accidents or coincidences. When similar situations, relationships, conflicts, or outcomes continue to appear, despite conscious efforts to change, they point to something deeper than external circumstances. These repetitions are expressions of unresolved inner work, revealing parts of the psyche that have not yet been understood or integrated. Life repeats itself not to punish, but to make visible what remains unconscious. Patterns often form early, shaped by formative experiences, emotional wounds, and survival strategies. The mind learns what to expect from the world and adapts accordingly. These adaptations become automatic responses, ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving that once provided protection or belonging. Over time, however, what was once useful can become limiting. When these patterns are not examined, they continue to operate beneath awareness, influencing choices and reactions without conscious consent. A person may repeatedly find themselves in similar relationships, encountering the same emotional dynamics, despite different faces or settings. Others may experience recurring failures, betrayals, or feelings of being unseen or undervalued. The details change, but the emotional outcome remains familiar. This familiarity is the key. The psyche gravitates toward what it knows, even if it is painful, because it has not yet learned another way to relate to itself or the world. Unresolved inner work often involves emotions that were never fully felt or expressed. Fear, shame, grief, or anger may have been suppressed to maintain stability or acceptance. When these emotions remain unintegrated, they seek expression through external events. Life then mirrors the inner state, creating situations that evoke the same feelings again and again. The repetition continues until awareness is brought to the underlying emotional truth. There is a tendency to blame circumstances or other people for recurring difficulties. While external factors do play a role, focusing solely on them prevents insight. The pattern persists not because of bad luck, but because the internal lens through which life is experienced has not yet changed. Recognition is the beginning of transformation. By observing patterns without judgment, one can begin to trace them back to their emotional roots. This process requires honesty and patience. It often reveals uncomfortable truths about needs, boundaries, and self-worth. Yet this discomfort is purposeful. It signals that consciousness is expanding into areas previously avoided. As unresolved inner work is addressed, the grip of repetition loosens. Choices become more conscious, reactions less automatic. The same situations may still arise, but no longer produce the same outcomes. Inner integration changes perception, and perception alters experience. Repeating patterns lose their power once their message is understood. What once felt like fate reveals itself as an invitation to deeper self-awareness and psychological completion. Real change rarely begins with effort alone. While force may produce temporary results, it does not create lasting transformation. Psychological and emotional change originates from awareness, the ability to see clearly what is happening within and around you without resistance or distortion. When awareness is present, change unfolds naturally, not through pressure but through understanding. Force attempts to control outcomes, while awareness allows insight to reshape behavior from the inside out. Many people attempt to change by pushing themselves harder, setting stricter rules, or suppressing unwanted traits. This approach assumes that inner conflict can be defeated through discipline, yet what is resisted often becomes more entrenched. The psyche does not respond well to coercion. When a thought, habit, or emotion is forcibly suppressed, it retreats into the unconscious, where it continues to influence behavior indirectly. Awareness, by contrast, brings these inner movements into the light, reducing their power without the need for struggle. Awareness creates space between impulse and action. In this space, choice becomes possible. Rather than reacting automatically, you begin to observe patterns as they arise: emotional triggers, defensive responses, recurring thoughts. This observation is not passive, it is transformative. When something is fully seen, it no longer operates unconsciously. Clarity replaces compulsion. The need to force change diminishes because insight naturally alters perception. Force often stems from impatience and fear. There is a belief that without constant effort nothing will improve, yet true change requires timing and readiness. Awareness reveals what is ready to shift and what still needs understanding. It respects the rhythm of the psyche. When you become aware of the function a behavior once served, self-judgment softens. This compassion allows change to occur without inner resistance. Emotional awareness is especially crucial. Many patterns persist because the emotions beneath them have not been acknowledged. Force tries to bypass these emotions, while awareness listens to them. When emotions are allowed to be felt and understood, they no longer need to express themselves through destructive habits or repeated situations. Awareness integrates what force attempts to eliminate. As awareness deepens, action becomes more precise. You no longer expend energy fighting yourself. Decisions arise from clarity rather than pressure. This alignment creates sustainable change because it is rooted in truth rather than control. Even difficult changes feel less draining when they emerge from understanding. Over time, awareness reshapes identity. You begin to see yourself not as a problem to be fixed, but as a process to be understood. This shift alters how you relate to challenges, mistakes, and growth. Force fractures the inner world, awareness unifies it. Real change begins the moment you stop trying to become someone else and start seeing who you already are. Inner alignment is not something that is created through effort or planning. It emerges when thoughts, emotions, values, and actions are no longer in conflict. When the inner world is coherent, life begins to move with a sense of quiet precision. The future does not need to be forced into existence because it unfolds as a natural extension of inner truth. What once felt uncertain or delayed starts to reveal itself through timely opportunities and intuitive clarity. Much of human struggle comes from acting against inner signals. People often pursue goals that contradict their deeper values, maintain relationships that drain their energy, or adopt beliefs that limit their sense of worth. This inner contradiction creates tension, confusion, and exhaustion. When alignment is absent, the future feels blocked or unstable. Decisions require excessive effort, and outcomes feel unpredictable. The psyche is divided, pulling in opposing directions. Inner alignment begins with honesty. It requires acknowledging what feels authentic and what does not, even when that truth is uncomfortable. This honesty brings awareness to subtle signals, emotional reactions, loss of motivation, recurring doubts that indicate misalignment. Instead of overriding these signals, aligned individuals listen to them. This listening does not always produce immediate answers, but it creates clarity over time. As inner conflict dissolves, energy that was once scattered becomes focused. When inner alignment is present, action becomes simpler. You are no longer driven by fear of missing out or the need to prove yourself. Choices arise from resonance rather than pressure. This does not mean life becomes effortless, but effort becomes meaningful. Each step feels connected to a deeper intention, even when the outcome is unknown. The future unfolds not as a rigid plan, but as a series of coherent responses to the present moment. Opportunities often appear when alignment is achieved, not because they are magically summoned, but because perception changes. You begin to notice possibilities that were previously ignored. Relationships shift, environments respond, and timing feels more precise. This is not chance, but alignment influencing awareness and behavior. When the inner world is ordered, the outer world reflects that order through synchronistic events. Trust plays a central role in this process. Inner alignment reduces the urge to control every detail of the future. Instead of constant anticipation or anxiety, there is a sense of grounded openness. You act when action is needed and wait when waiting is required. This balance allows life to move organically without resistance or strain. As alignment deepens, the future loses its threatening quality. It becomes an unfolding rather than a demand. You no longer chase meaning. Meaning emerges through lived experience. Inner alignment does not predict the future, but it prepares you to meet it fully. What arrives feels earned not through force, but through authenticity and coherence. As this message comes to you now, understand that nothing is accidental. When awareness deepens, old identities dissolve, patterns reveal themselves, and inner alignment begins to form. Life quietly prepares its next movement. You are not behind, and you are not broken. You are in transition. What feels uncertain is simply the space where transformation is taking place. Remain attentive, not forceful. Trust what is unfolding within you, because when the inner world is aligned, the outer path reveals itself without struggle. This moment is not asking you to become someone new, but to live as who you already are,